Content warning. This episode contains a brief discussion of transphobia. If you're uncomfortable with this topic, feel free to stop at 19 minutes 34 seconds and skip ahead to 25 minutes 35 seconds to avoid it. Thank you for your patience, and we hope you enjoy the podcast. Slurm! It's highly addictive. The 31st century's most popular soft drink is hosting a contest. The customer who finds a golden bottle cap inside their can will win a free tour of the Slurm Factory and the chance to party with their beloved mascot, original party worm Slurms Mackenzie. Determined to win, Fry starts drinking massive quantities of Slurm. That same day, the professor demonstrates his latest invention, the F-ray, a flashlight that allows the user to see through any material, including metal. This gives Fry an idea, and he and Bender take the F-ray and set about the city, using it to look inside every Slurm can they can find in search of the elusive golden bottle cap. After checking tens of thousands of cans to no avail, they return to the office defeated. But by a massive stroke of luck, Fry reaches for the nearest can of Slurm in the office refrigerator and guzzles it down, revealing what but the golden bottle cap. Soon, the Planet Express crew is off to the planet Wormulon for their tour of the Slurm Factory. During the tour, a thirsty Fry attempts to drink from the factory's river of Slurm, only to fall in. Leela dives in to save him, and Bender follows. But before they can return to the tour boat, they are sucked through a whirlpool into a system of caves that runs beneath the factory. It is there that they discover the shocking truth. The factory they were touring was a fake, and the real factory is a simple assembly line where the massive Slurm Queen squirts pure Slurm out of her rear end straight into the cans. The horrified trio are quickly captured and imprisoned by the worms, who will not allow them to leave and expose this secret into the world. Bender is tied to an assembly line that turns scrap metal into soda cans, Leela is lowered into a vat of royal Slurm that will slowly transform her into another Slurm Queen, and Fry is placed in front of a vat of ultra-concentrated super Slurm that he will be unable to resist eating until he bursts. Indeed, Fry cannot tear himself away from the delicious vat, but through sheer force of will is able to drag it with him over to Leela and kick the lever to free her. Leela then saves Bender and dumps the vat of Super Slurm into a drain to break Fry free of his compulsion. As they flee into the caves, they encounter Slurms Mackenzie. The poor worm is tired of partying and wants only to leave Planet Wormulon so he can finally take a break and relax. But just as the others agree to take him with them, the Slurm Queen reappears and gives chase. When all hope seems lost, Slurms stops and tells them to keep going. He will stay behind and stall her the only way he knows how, by partying. While Fry, Bender, and Leela run, the music from Slurms' boombox and his sick dance moves cause a cave-in, taking his life but stopping the Slurm Queen. The Planet Express ship takes off, and the Slurm Queen despairs. With the secret out, Slurm is over, and she is ruined. In the end, however, she has nothing to worry about. When Fry learns that sharing the secret of Slurm would lead to a ban on the drink, he decides it's best if they all just keep it to themselves. The Planet Express crew crack open their cans of Slurm and throw themselves a party as one final toast to the fallen Slurms Mackenzie. Welcome to Space Podcast 3000, where the future is in the past.
I freaking love this episode. This was a great episode. Excellent way of ending the season, honestly.
It did have a lot of really good jokes, and like right off the bat, it's hitting with the ground running with the All My Circuit scene with just this robot beeping and Calculon just like, oh, how I wish I could believe that. What did he say? What do you want to believe, Calculon?
I just love the joke that he's like killing his half brother. He says he's gonna kill the part that's legal to kill. Like, well, you're not allowed to kill your people that aren't your brother either.
You may be my evil half-brother, but there's no law against murdering the other half. There quite literally is.
Well, maybe it's different for robots, but...
Yeah, the evil brother probably said, it's not what it looks like.
Maybe, but, I mean, it could be something else, for all we know. Although, I suppose for robots it wouldn't necessarily be murder, more likely, like, property damage.
So yeah, we get this whole thing is obviously this huge pastiche of Willy Wonka, which I like that movie enough, but this was done at a time when even Willy Wonka parodies were really overused. I think, probably because it is such an iconic movie that there were so many great parodies of it, but this one does have like a really great different take on it, just this really kind of cynical look at it.
Even now, like, even more current, parodies of Willy Wonka, they always seem to use the Gene Wilder version. Of course, here, the Johnny Depp one wasn't made yet.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, the Gene Wilder version is still by far the most iconic. It's the better version of the movie. It's the one everyone knows.
It's just, yeah, because it is just so colorful and so memorable. Just the set design in that original movie is just so eye-catching. It's so many people recognize it, what you're parodying. And even the design of the Grunka-Lunkas are obviously based on the ones from that movie. Which, I mean, again, they would have to be since the Johnny Depp version wasn't made yet. But the way that they are, it is... And they really do comment on a lot of things that people have pointed out. It's like, yeah, the Oompa Loompas are essentially slaves. And it's like, yeah, they get their labor cheap. And he actually tempts Hermes with that sort of thing.
Ironically, I believe Ronald Dahl hated the original version.
Yeah, he did not like the original movie because he really didn't like Gene Wilder as Wonka. Which is weird because it's difficult to imagine anyone else in that role. Like Johnny Depp, I guess, but he was not nearly as good.
Yeah, they have completely different vibes.
Absolutely. And they're different vibes. They're both interesting, but they really are completely different takes on everything.
Yeah, I like Johnny Depp, but he's not nearly as charming in this kind of a role.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, with Guillermo talking about the Grunka-Lunkas, working for Ed, and like Hermes just like, so you're saying I could fire all my staff and hire Grunka-Lunkas at half the price? I mean, your boss is a bastard. Even if you like him, he's a bastard. That's just how capitalists are, unavoidably. Join a union, kids.
Yeah.
The Grunka-Lunkas need to unionize. And the fact that they are still trying to sing these songs, that they just really pushing the joke, is like, it's obviously what they're going to try to rhyme. Dunka ingredients, Dunka the darm guards.
I lost it at Grunka-Lunka Dunkity darmed guards.
Yeah, that's great, because they don't even need to finish the joke. It's like, get back to work!
Yeah, their song is like something the mob would sing, though, just threatening bodily harm, like, stop asking questions or we are going to murder you. It's a good joke.
Mob musical.
I would watch a mob musical.
I think there are some, actually.
None that I'm aware of, but possibly. So, of course, at the beginning of the episode, we transition straight from All My Circuits into an ad starring this Slurms Mackenzie, who's an obvious riff off of Spuds Mackenzie, that dog character Budweiser used in the 80s.
Yeah, Slurms Mackenzie is really kind of a more, ironically enough, being a slug, he's a more realistic look at that kind of a character, where, yeah, if someone were forced to party all the time, like, contractually obligated to party all the time, they would be absolutely burnt out.
Yeah, although, you mentioned you called him a slug. It's interesting how they look like slugs, but throughout the entire episode, everyone calls them worms.
Yeah, well, slugs, worms, they're kind of like huts, I suppose.
I guess. Although, weird bit of related trivia. The dog that played Spuds Mackenzie, even though the character was male, the dog was female, and her name, and I'm not making this up, was Honey Tree Evil Eye.
I love that.
That is adorable and terrifying.
Well, depressingly, she was dead before this episode made it to air.
Oh, the dog that played the Taco Bell dog was named Gidget.
I knew a dog named Gidget. She was a pug, though.
It's a good name for a dog.
But yeah, the Slurm ad is definitely not just reminiscent of the Budweiser commercial, but also of, tobacco and alcohol ads in general.
Yeah, you saw a lot of extreme ads like that throughout like the 80s and 90s, and it feels like Slurm might have been modeled after the kinds of ad campaigns that were used for Surge, with the whole like extreme image.
Surge, it is green like Mountain Dew. So I always, what do you imagine Slurm tastes like? I always imagine it tastes kind of like a thicker Mountain Dew.
I don't know, but I've never really been a fan of soft drinks. It's too sweet.
Maybe like lemon lime jello. Just hasn't set.
Makes sense, yeah.
Although I like how Bender's response to seeing Slurm's Mackenzie is, who says there are no more heroes? I mean, the third game is coming out in August.
Nice.
They did sort of do the similar idea of like the party guy with Duffman in The Simpsons, so that's an obvious comparison between Duffman and Slurm's Mackenzie. I'm pretty sure Duffman came first. But yeah, Duffman is really, they don't kind of take the joke the same direction with Slurms, because Slurms is just such a pathetic character. I love him.
Did you notice that there was a lot of fine print at the end of the ad? Like, if you pause it, what it reads out is, Slurm has been known to cause cancer in laboratory humans.
Laboratory human.
Followed by, employees of Slurm Corp and their families are eligible to enter and will probably win. Which is the exact reason why most contests like this in real life disqualify anyone, who is family to anyone who works at the company.
Going back to what I was talking about, there's definitely, a lot of references to drugs and addiction in this episode.
And they're really upfront about it. As if it's in their tagline. It's highly addictive.
Yeah, that's their marketing.
So yeah, in the future, they don't even care anymore.
I guess not. And then, Fry has all of those, a whole freaking pile of teeth that have just fallen out because of the drinking so much Slurm. That's just gross, dude.
It's one of the prizes inside.
Ugh.
Let's talk about the absurdity that the prize they're looking for is a golden bottle cap inside the can.
Yeah, and then when they find it, it's because Fry is choking on it, which is exactly what I knew was going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. When you put the prize inside the can, what do you expect to do? Which I believe is kind of based on this old urban legend that there were like, they would have prizes, or they would have like a prize can where you open it up and instead of soda inside, it had ballast. It had like salt water inside in order to keep it the same weight as a regular can. But you open it up and it starts playing this announcement. It's like, you won a prize or whatever. So the prize being inside the can itself was something that they did. I think it was back in like the 80s that there was like an urban legend going around that the prize didn't go off and then the person ended up drinking it and died, which isn't true. It was just salt water. It's just ballast.
I'm just thinking about, like, this is why the FDA doesn't let you do that. Like, you literally, FDA regulations in the United States, you cannot sell a food item with any, like, unless it's a natural thing, like a pit and a peach.
Right.
You cannot have a food item where you have an inedible thing completely enclosed in edible matter. It has to be at least slightly exposed so people know it's there.
Which is why they are unable to sell Kinder Eggs here.
Yeah,
that's exactly the thing that's cited for Kinder Eggs. Which is, so if you look at what they are allowed to sell here, it has like that ridge around the outside, or it's just like a completely different thing where it has like the dipping spoon.
Yeah, because of that, they had to redesign the Kinder Eggs to sell them here.
Yeah, they're like more of a fudgy icing like texture than a solid chocolate.
And the toys in a completely separate section of it.
Yeah, I have a couple dinosaurs.
So in every opening sequence, you have a little cartoon clip, typically something public domain, but for whatever reason, in this episode, it was a piece of one of the Simpsons shorts from when it was on the Tracy Ullman show.
Yeah, which, I mean, they have the rights to use. It is Matt Groening, it is Fox.
Yeah. It's just interesting that that's there.
I'm surprised that they haven't used that more often. I want to point out the joke at the beginning where it says live from Omicron Persei 8, which, as established in When Aliens Attack, is 1,000 light years away. So they would have been broadcasting this episode 1,000 years ago and just reaching us now.
Yeah, I didn't realize this episode was made in the year 999.
They were very forward thinking.
So Bender, of course, walks into the scene, and he is running a temperature of 900 degrees and burns Leela's hand to the touch, and then he just lies down on the couch and it bursts into flames.
I like the effect that you do actually see him a different color.
Yeah.
Because normally if he's sick or drunk or whatever, they just kind of put the rust around his mouth. But no, they actually made him look rather pathetic, turning like a really, in his case, would be a sickly red color, which isn't, he's supposed to be gray. So ironically, he looks more flesh-toned when he's sick than when he's normal.
I like how after he destroys the couch, though, Hermes' immediate response isn't just like, oh, are you okay? Or holy crap, or even like fear. He's just like, you're paying for that.
That's exactly what my dad would do. If I scream because I'm hurting myself, his first reaction is, shut up. His second reaction is, are you okay?
Why are you still living with him again?
Economy? It's 2021.
No, fair. Moving out in this economy?
Living on my own in this economy?
Tres leches? En esta economia? my pronunciation there was probably terrible, but I love that joke.
Yeah.
I want to comment on we're really jumping ahead, but there are so many great one-liners where they're using the F-ray to look at things, and Fry goes, ow, my sperm!
Yes, and then the second time, didn't hurt that time.
Because they're all dead. But just that line of ow, my sperm, it's just like, that, I don't think you're able to feel your sperm.
Yeah, it's not the kind of joke that I would typically like, but the way he words it is really good. Like, they do a lot of good jokes with the F-ray, but like even before we get to the F-ray, like Amy suggests homeopathic medicine, and the professor's like, or a placebo, it's all the same.
Pretty much, yeah. If you look at there's a guy in The Amazing Randy, he would always, like, he would talk about how he made this whole career of debunking quackery and just, like, anybody who claimed to be, like, a future seer or cold reading and anything like that. And he would start his talks by taking an entire bottle of homeopathic sleeping pills. Because they are nothing. They are absolutely worthless.
Yeah, homeopathy is a placebo. That's all it is. Like, you're diluting stuff so much that it might as well not even be there.
But the placebo effect can actually, make a difference. It is crazy what it can do.
Yeah, which is anything that people attribute to homeopathic medicine is explained by the placebo effect. They think it's going to work, so it ends up working, which there's certainly something to be said for that, but if you are actually sick, look into getting real medicine.
Yeah, the placebo effect is frankly astounding, though, like to the point that it still works even if you know that what you're taking is a placebo. It is that powerful.
Yeah, which, I mean, there's certainly something to be said for the power of the mind, but in many cases, you really do need actual medicine. You can't rely on homeopathy.
Oh, absolutely. And then, of course, the F-ray lets you see through anything, but, like, if it lets you see through everything, how do you see anything? It would also,
right, exactly.
Should go through whatever it is you're trying to see.
Maybe it just makes it transparent instead of, like, slightly transparent instead of perfectly opaque.
Maybe, but then it would still be incredibly difficult to make anything out. This is just one of those things where you think about it for 5 minutes and it's like, wait.
It's like the acid in this bottle dissolves anything it touches. It's like, wait a second.
Why doesn't it dissolve the bottle? Yeah, like, that said, the show has never really depended on the most reliable science, so it runs on hand-wavium,
which is funny. Well, in many cases it does rely on actual science. It takes a look at all these things, so when they do break the science, it's obviously in the favor of comedy,
or for the sake of having a plot in this case,
right? Which again, they're usually very careful about lamp shading if necessary.
Yeah, but with the F-ray we do have to talk about the one bit in this episode that I really do not like.
We have to.
And, I mean, you were there, and I straight up had to pause the episode when we got to this point because I needed a minute. Where Bender just points the F-ray at a fembot and immediately gasps and is like, "That's no lady." And her response is just, "One more upgrade and I'll be more lady than you can handle." And, like, not only is this character just a massive queer stereotype, this is awful, awful transphobic garbage.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, it doesn't last very long, but it is just the worst.
Yeah, there's no reason for it.
There really isn't. It's not funny. It's just mean. And like that, this really drags down the episode. Like the rest of it is really good, but this scene just, ugh. You got to get through this to get to the rest of the episode, and it sucks, man. It really sucks. Ugh.
I really have no comments about that. I admit I've never encountered anything like that myself. I'm just, but the way I see it, the character does not. Maybe she is angry that they're always making these accusations about her, so her anger is justified in her response to them.
It's not so much that she comes across as angry. It's just the whole thing and the fact that like the way she moves and dresses and talks. And that it's, like, such a stereotype. And, like, this is the kind of thing where, like I in 1999, I was, 7 years old. I was too young to be watching the show. But when I was first watching it in syndication years later, I was just a teenager, hadn't realized I was transgender yet. So this kind of stuff, it was kind of invisible. It's something you don't really notice, especially back when it aired. You know what I mean? Because this shit was pervasive. It was everywhere in the 90s and the early 2000s. But now, like, with the awareness, like, it makes it really hard to go back to any comedies, especially from this era, because it really is just everywhere. Like, recently I was hearing that apparently, like, they want to do a revival of Ace Ventura, and I'm just like, no, do not. Because, like, that was one of the worst examples of this.
And it really sucks because sometimes this stuff still pops up today. And it's just... Why?
Well, you do keep in mind the time that it was made, the fact that they do make so many jokes, and that is the problem with making comedy, is that comedy is the art form that is one of the quickest to age and one of the most likely to age poorly. So in many cases, you just kind of have to write it off as like that was the writing style at the time. Because I'm sure they make plenty of other jokes about all kinds of things here that in the future may also be unable to talking about. They're talking about the overworking of the Grunka-Lunkas and the whole union thing where they're replacing people. Is like, that's a pretty horrific idea if you really think about it. Or the fact that the jokes with the Slurm cans and people choking on it, and that maybe somebody actually does die due to choking on something that was inside of a can, and that you can't make that sort of a joke. And there's always going to be problems that pop up with these sort of when they're trying to do comedy. And really the only solution is to just, they weren't obviously trying to offend people to the point that they ended up doing it. So you have to look at the intent, you have to look at the jokes, and you have to look at the way that is presented.
Well, like, you're right about, comedy, particularly transgressive comedy, pushing boundaries and aging very quickly and often very poorly. But in this instance, there wasn't even really a joke there. Like, the joke wasn't this transgender robot is acting silly. It's just this transgender robot exists. The joke was just, haha, trans people exist. And, like, that's not a joke.
It's just an observation. Yeah, you have to take the joke and go further with it. So but again, you can't. It's difficult to continue. I understand that you're getting mad at this show that was made 20 years ago, but what does it accomplish to get mad at it? Obviously, you're wanting to point it out. You're wanting to point out that this is not an okay joke to make today. but this was 20 years ago. So pointing it out, of course, helps people now, but it doesn't exactly change the thing after the fact.
Well, I want to clarify, like, it's not just that it isn't okay today. It was not okay at the time either. It's just that at the time, people were less able or willing to speak up about it. That's really the case with all this stuff, but we've really gone on about this for a very long time now. There's plenty more to talk about in this episode. And, like, the one thing I can say in defense of this gag is it's not the worst that Futurama would become in this regard, because there are 2 episodes I can think of off the top of my head much later that are significantly worse. So probably best to save some of my frustration until then.
Yeah, because the thing about the joke is that it's one and done. It's over with once it's over. They don't continue to hit on it afterward.
Yeah, it drags down the episode a bit, but it doesn't linger on it for too long. And we're immediately on to the next scene where we're, at this the 7-Eleven, and there's some great background gags there, like the sign that says they're open 28 hours. Or in the store they sell Slurmies and hot logs. Not hot dogs, hot logs.
It was,
of course,
not just 7-Eleven, it's 7 to the 11th power, which is 1,977,326,743.
You're right. That's impressive.
I just used a calculator.
I'm surprised that they didn't, put that on in the show somewhere. It would have been a little subtle gag.
Well, maybe the hot logs are vegan hot dogs, so they're more akin to a plant than a meat.
True, logs and wood.
And, of course, in the 7-Eleven, you have Fry, looking at the Slurm cans and the F-ray and just going like, wait, I'm getting an idea. No, false alarm. No, yeah, no, yeah, no, yes. Like, that's... I like that joke. Like, you can see the gears turning in his head, and it reminds me of that Simpsons joke with the Lisa needs braces dental plan over and over.
Yeah.
Teasy, you know the one I'm talking about.
It very is similar to that, or with when you're trying to see the gears turning, or when Bart is trying to set up he's setting up the megaphones, and he's thinking about the megaphones, like, hey, wait, if one of them increases at this amount, what happens if I set up multiples?
Yeah, and while, the gag is supposed to be like, haha, Fry isn't smart, it's something, I'm sure a lot of people can relate to. Just having a brain fart as they're trying to think up something.
Well, in Fry's case, it's much more common, his sort of brain fart, but yeah, they use it, and of course, the fact that they win all this junk that's, just branded with all kinds of Slurm stuff, and it's I would love a Slurm hat.
Yeah, we've checked 90,000 cans of Slurm, and all we won was this junk, and then they gesture over to a cooler full of Slurm, a bunch of sweaters and hats, a motorcycle, and a jet ski.
You could probably sell that for a lot.
Yeah.
Probably.
Especially because they'd be, limited edition merch.
Speaking of brain farts, Stanley Kubrick. Eden, that conversation we were having before we started recording. Stanley Kubrick, that was the name I was trying to think of and couldn't. So, yeah, everyone experiences brain farts, even me.
Yeah, there you go. I believe it's called jamais vu, which is or jamais vu or presque vu.
I'm not sure.
It's the opposite of deja vu, where something you should know just ends up being you don't recognize it.
I don't know. There are other good jokes with the F-ray.
Are we just going to go through the entire episode to pointing out the jokes we like? This could be a really long episode if that's what we're doing, because there were a lot of really great jokes in this one.
Yeah.
It also just flows really well. It's a very dense episode, but it doesn't feel... It feels longer than it normally would be, but that's not really a detriment to it. Because it feels longer because you want the episode to feel longer. You want it to feel longer than it actually is.
Yeah, there was a lot of really good stuff in here. Although the F-ray subplot ended up being a bit of a waste of time. Because, they do all of that, and they don't find it, and then literally the very first can Fry drinks after getting back was the winner. So we burn 7 minutes, a full third of the episode's runtime, to basically accomplish nothing aside from just being funny. Which, in a comedy that's enough, but... it does feel a little disappointing.
Maybe they had both ideas of how they find the bottle cap, like Fry choking on it would be the easier way to do, but I guess they're trying to get out they're trying to get rid of the Deus Ex Machina thing. Is like Fry got extremely lucky and he found that after trying nothing. But they subvert it comedically. Is like they tried all this and found nothing, and then as soon as they give up, he ends up finding it, which is that's irony right there.
Yeah, whatever you're looking for is right in front of your face.
Oh, it's a good punchline, but I kind of wish we could have gotten a bit more screen time in the Slurm Factory. Like, maybe they could have parodied a couple more scenes from Willy Wonka. Like, they could have done the tunnel sequence.
Yeah, because they are on the boat. They kind of parody everything but the tunnel sequence on the boat.
Yeah, like, imagine what kinds of jokes they could have come up with to make fun of the tunnel sequence.
Even the Tom and Jerry Willy Wonka did the tunnel sequence.
Oh my god, don't even get me started on how absurd the Tom and Jerry Willy Wonka movie is.
I do like the fact that Slurm is established in previous episodes. That is a good attention to detail that they bring up because they established a lot of things in the previous episodes, like all kinds of different brand names, but Slurm was a recurring one. It's what Fry drinks. It's their future soda that he likes.
Did you notice that the professor and Leela playing what looks like 3D Scrabble?
3D Scrabble?
Yes, I
it's
did.
like 3D chess, but they're playing Scrabble on it. I love that.
Yeah, if you look at it's clearly like the 3D chessboard from Star Trek, but it's just Scrabble. And in a nice little background gag, the professor is one letter short of spelling the show's title, and there's an open A right on the board.
Not that, though that would not be legal in modern Scrabble. You can't do proper nouns.
It may be legal in the future, though.
It's a joke, but... And then, of course, they win the contest and we travel over to planet Wormulon, who have turned their planet's rings into a giant Slurm billboard. I guess they've modeled their entire global economy on this soft drink.
If it's popular enough to sell all over... this happens if a single town or city gets famous for one particular thing and the creator ends up getting rich enough, they can do that. They can basically employ their entire community if they so choose.
If we get out into space travel and the company still exists, we'd probably end up with a Disney planet.
I would not be surprised, honestly. That is the exact sort of thing that they would do. Because that's what they think has held back space exploration, the fact that you can't necessarily make money in it.
I mean, can you imagine, though, like, privatized space travel and exploration? Like we make first contact with aliens, and legally they're required to tell the aliens that their spaceship is, like, during the introductions, like, our spaceship is sponsored by the Disney Corporation, and then go into a whole marketing spiel. Can you imagine?
Oh, geez, that's like a premise for I'm sure there's been premises of sci-fi games or movies that have done that sort of thing. That's essentially the plot of The Outer Worlds.
Yeah, kinda.
That instead of that everything is basically run by corporations, which are essentially religions, and you have to follow a particular corporation instead of a particular religion.
Honestly, that sounds really scary considering how things are today. Like, even now we can see, with SpaceX, wanting to, all the stuff with that. Like, it's a bit much to go into.
Wanting to explore Mars and putting that sort of money into that, yeah.
And then, of course, there already are some brands that are almost like religions.
Apple, Coca-Cola. If you go to the southern parts of the U.S., yeah, Coca-Cola.
They do actually make a joke that I believe is in reference to Coca-Cola, but we'll get to that.
Oh yeah, that was a big one.
Yeah, we'll get there. Into the Willy Wonka parody, they arrive at the factory and Guillermo rolls out inside the red carpet, which is yet another missed opportunity to do a Willy Wonka joke. Like, they could have parodied the pratfall scene. Which,
I mean, I think that's... I don't know, I like that they wanted the episode to keep going quickly, because that really would have slowed things down, and I don't think it would have accomplished too much, because then you're just recreating a scene from a movie.
And it doesn't really work if you don't have legs.
Yeah, that would have been the joke, though. Like, they could have had him do a pratfall without legs and have someone point out, like, how did you do that as a slug or a worm or whatever? Like, there's a joke there, and they missed it.
I think it's still cool him being in the red carpet, though.
Yeah, that's still a good joke. I'm just pointing out there were other jokes they could have done that would have been more direct parodies. And then, Slurms, who has to party all night every night or he's fired. What does that actually accomplish? Like, what do they get out of it?
He's a mascot. That's what they have to do. Anybody who's ever... You look at people that are like sign spinners or mascots at businesses, they have to keep their energy up. That's what they're paid for.
Yeah, but not 24/7 all day, every day in their personal lives. Like, when they're not on the clock, there's really not a whole lot of point to it. When Slurms isn't on camera in a commercial, why does he need to still be partying? What do you get from that?
He keeps in character, but again, you can look at that sort of thing, like people that have gotten consequences for things they said when they weren't actually working at the company. You expect them to be loyal to the company 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365.247 days a year. You're seeing that a lot now. You see people that said something on Twitter or they shared something on Facebook and they get fired over it. Like a guy who shared an anti-work meme. Like this, I saw a story of a guy who shared that meme. It was like, the boss makes $1, I make a dime. That's why I poop on company time.
Yeah, I remember that.
and then his boss is like, well, maybe you can poop on your own time because you're fired. And it's like, what the fuck?
Yes, morality clauses.
Yeah.
I'd rather not get into that whole can of worms right now, because it's a whole thorny debate, and, there's a lot of gray areas. Like, if someone, posts something incredibly hateful and vile, then, yeah, they should probably get fired for it, because it's like, we don't want someone like this representing our company. But if it is just, a personal thing, there's definitely, there's shades to it.
Yeah, that's the sort of thing that you would see in a series like this, is where they don't actually go into that sort of detail. They just hit on the very basics of, this is fucked up, and now he has his clause where he has to party 24/7. And that's just kind of the basis of that entire joke, where there's so many things you can infer from that sort of thing.
It feels almost like a twisted version of the Japanese idol industry. Are you familiar at all with that whole thing? Where if there's even an implication that a female idol might be seeing a boy, even if it's just a friendship, she can be forced into doing a public apology and kicked from her band, and it's a whole thing.
Yeah, Praline's age from the Bravely series, it not changing between the original and the sequel, is a reference to the Japanese idol industry.
Huh. I never would have caught that. There's a lot of ways in which stuff like contractual purity and morality clauses can really be easily abused, but let's move on. So, Guillermo's way of speaking is clearly, a riff on Gene Wilder in the Willy Wonka movie, as we've said. And it's done very well. I don't know off the top of my head who voices him, but they do a bang-up job. And especially when they have to say some of the things that are just inherently a bit silly, like, welcome to the wondrous world of whimsy that we call Slurm's Centralized Industrial Fabrication Unit.
There's this completely unpoetic name that's just completely utilitarian.
One thing that I find funny is when because they synthesized their own spring water, and
yes,
yeah, what?
It's just H2O.
Yeah, but one thing is, they're mixing hydrogen in one tank and oxygen in the other. That reaction is actually really volatile, so I don't know how they contain it.
And it wouldn't be making glacial water, they'd be making distilled water.
Maybe there's other stuff mixed in. I don't know.
Which is basically how they manufacture glacial water. Is if you look at Dasani or any of these things, they basically start with distilled water. Well, they start with regular water, turn it into distilled water, and then add minerals and things back into it. But it is, as an industry, the bottled water, in many cases, I believe most people know that bottled water there's nothing all that special about it. That it's just, it happens to be water, but you have to pay for it, which is like, that's kind of fucked up on its own.
You're paying more for the plastic than the water.
Yeah, really.
That too, but like you also have Nestle bottling water in areas that are experiencing droughts and just eating all of it for themselves.
Yeah, that's the part that's fucked up, yeah.
Yeah, or the Flint water crisis that's still going on. I believe that was also Nestle?
Might have been. Capitalism!
Yay!
Yeah, unfortunately, we have to get back to capitalism in this episode.
I mean,
it is kind of an overarching theme with this series, both our podcast and the Futurama series, because it's a big issue going on right now in 2021.
And it was an issue back then.
Yeah, basically every problem in the world today can be traced back in some way, shape, or form to capitalism. And in America in particular, you can probably also trace stuff back to Ronald Reagan, but that's a completely separate rant.
Reaganomics, yes.
Anyway, one of my favorite jokes in the episode is just Glurmo saying there will be no further questions, and then Fry immediately raises his hand and is just like, why?
Fry.
It's such a simple joke, but...
It's like,
yeah.
Can I ask you a question? You just did.
Yep. Or, when they're in the Slurm River, Bender, why'd you jump in? Everyone was doing it, I just wanted to be popular. Continuing the running theme of Bender craving social validation.
Aw. Relatable, though.
It's like, this isn't Slurm. And I immediately think, this isn't Slurm, this is Mountain Dew.
And then, of course, you have Leela saying, something's rotten on the planet Wormulon. Gee, you think? With a name like Wormulon, I was expecting everyone to be morally upright. What do you think, Grandma Wormtongue?
What do you think, Elin Sleeves Bagano? I've always had a big thing about names, because, like, when you name somebody something, obviously you want it to be poetic, you want it to be artistically relevant to their role in the story, but at a certain point, it's like, what did their parents know about this person that they knew that they... Like, in Chrono Trigger, did Chrono's parents know that he would eventually be traveling through time?
Every character in My Little Pony.
Yeah.
Yeah, that too.
And you also have, like, J.K. Rowling, who has a werewolf character that she named Wolfie McWerewolf, basically.
Yeah, his name is Moon, essentially.
So we cut to the souvenir shop, and there's a background gag where the t-shirts come in the sizes small, medium, large, and mutant. And the mutant shirts have 4 arms.
Of course. Which, even the Wormulonians, what would they be called?
I don't know.
I'm not sure they would be able to wear that, because, like, the Slurm Queen has 6 arms.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very much not one size fits all mutants.
And Zoidberg finds a t-shirt that says Slurm in Hebrew, and yes, it actually does say Slurm. Well, Slurm. About as close as you can get in Hebrew, honestly.
Yeah, when I was reading it, I was like, okay, there's that obviously that it's done to kind of look like alien writing, but I guess like I always felt Arabic kind of looks like the most alienish writing.
Well, Zoidberg is Jewish coded, so that's where a lot of the joke lies.
Of course, yeah.
But I really like that gag. That definitely gets me. And Fry commenting, I'm never going 12 minutes without a Slurm again.
When you're soda addiction is a thing. I mean, there is caffeine in it, which can be extremely addictive if you're drinking a lot of it. I went through a phase and I was drinking like 3-4 sodas a day.
Sugar is addictive.
And like Fry made the comment that at a certain point he was drinking 100 cans a week up until his 3rd heart attack. That's like the perfect punchline to that joke.
Yeah, my friend John drinks a lot of soda, and at one point he tried, to quit drinking soda to try to lose weight, and he ended up going through severe caffeine withdrawal, like really short-tempered, clearly not doing well for a while.
Yeah, which it happens, but I mean, again, we're talking about jokes that haven't aged well. You look at things like caffeine addiction and stuff like that, it's still kind of presented almost as a joke when addiction has hurt a lot of people. So, I mean, there's the problem of making this sort of joke when you can't make other sorts of jokes. So, again, comedy is a very difficult tightrope to walk.
I mean, There are people who say that, like, the root of comedy is suffering, but then, I mean, I always laugh at Yard Sard.
Who's on first?
That's a good one. Yeah, there are ways to make jokes that aren't at someone's expense.
Well, Yard Sard is a joke at the expense of people that like things to be written correctly. It's sort of a joke that you have to work harder on reading this. It's also a joke on people that have trouble writing. It could be a joke about people that have dyslexia or have trouble writing things out properly, people that English is not their first language. So, and also Who's on First is a joke at the expense of baseball or people that have silly nicknames or people that because they made other jokes like Who's on First, like who is a common Asian last name, and Watt was like the inventor of George Watt. And so you can sort of see them change these sort of things around. I've seen some versions of it where some versions or subversions, like either one works, where they do kind of change it around and make it into a more concrete joke.
Well, with Who's on First, I still think my favorite take on that is the one the Animaniacs did with the band The Who.
Right, yeah. Because there are bands, there's the Who, there's the Who, there's the What, there's the Why.
Who are we is both the answer and the question.
There's the band. There's yes. There was literally a band called The.
Yeah, there's the.
Band names are weird, man.
One of my favorite takes on Who's on First is they actually replaced them with actual baseball players.
Huh.
But they go through the same routine. And where instead of saying I don't know, he actually says the baseball player's name. I think he said as like Tino Martinez, Scott Brocious. It's like, you know the guy's name. I say Tino Martinez is on first, Scott Brocious is on second.
At that point, the joke doesn't even make any sense anymore.
Again, that's because you know the original, and they just replaced it with the actual baseball player's name.
So anyway, they eventually discover the disgusting secret of Slurm. They find the Slurm Queen, and who's just squeezing all of the Slurm out from her hiney. And, Fry spits out the Slurm he was drinking, and then, immediately starts drinking it again, and then spits it out again. That's a good spit take.
But the fact that they keep going with it, even after the commercial break, he comes back, he's like, it's terrible, and then he drinks, get that. And finally Leo's just, get that thing away from you.
And as they're running away, he literally just tries to reach back and get it again.
Yeah. The Queen's argument about milk and other bodily fluids being consumed.
Yeah, that's actually a pretty solid argument, honestly.
Yeah.
Honey comes from a bee's behind, which doesn't quite really. It comes from their mouth, but...
Yeah, she says, honey comes from a bee's behind, milk from a cow's, and if you ever use toothpaste. None of those things come from anyone's behind, though.
Well, milk kind of closest, because the udder is sort of close to them, but, they're worms that they don't really have many other holes that it could come out of.
So here's the thing. Bees regurgitate honey, cow udders are closer to nipples, and toothpaste is really just a mixture of fluoride and abrasive and some other miscellaneous ingredients. None of those come from anyone's butt.
Which, yeah, it's the classic rule of threes where you have two standard jokes and then a third weird one, which would be the toothpaste in this situation. But, the argument is sound even if the logic is not. Or the logic is sound even if the actual argument they make for it is not. It's like, yeah, honey is made by insects, and in fact, it is the only food produced by insects that both humans and insects like.
Yeah, fair. The fact that it comes from her butt is not the disgusting part, or, it's not the problem. The problem, at least for me, is that they're lying about it, that they haven't disclosed what the real ingredients are.
Sure.
Which, to be fair, they lie about the secret formula of Coca-Cola as well. That's an industry secret. Yeah, industry secrets and trade secrets do exist, but you do still need to, disclose things like, for instance, potential allergens. Which, if Slurm has not had any problems in that regard, it's fine to completely... And of course, they have no problems with this in a later episode where they just land and eat things that are sitting in a pit. That's a good point. And that's actually a really good episode, but
we're getting ahead of ourselves. So as they're fleeing from, the Slurm Queen and the guards, Bender saves their lives and then just, and they hand over money, just demanding payment for saving their lives, including his own, of course.
Typical Bender.
Right.
Yeah, it's Bender. It's definitely in character. But, they end up back in the Queen's chamber, and Bender's just like, Your Majesty, I brought the prisoners. Points for trying, I guess?
Again, it is a bit padded because they escape and then they're caught again, and then Fry is trying to find the secret and then finds it without using the F-ray. So a lot of their efforts end up being for naught. But again, it's in the service of making a funny episode, which I think is the most important part of this.
Yeah, you can do padding as long as it's funny, as long as it's not excessive. You don't want to end up in a situation like a lot of Simpsons episodes where they start with one plot line and then it just gets dropped halfway for another one.
Yeah, there was a major cohesive plot for the entire thing where they talk about the Slurm contest and they end up winning the Slurm contest.
So, I think now is the time to talk about new Slurm.
Yeah.
I know the Slurm Queen introduces we'll market it as new Slurm. Then when everyone hates it, we'll bring back Slurm Classic and make billions.
Which I don't honestly think that was a conspiracy on the part of Coca-Cola. But yeah, back in the 80s and the late 80s, this is right around the time, because they might have brought New Coke back right around the time that I was learning that. Because I've only known Coca-Cola Classic. I didn't really know why they called it Coca-Cola Classic, because I caught this right at the tail end of when New Coke was happening. But yeah, back in the 80s, they replaced Coke with New Coke. That people, basically, it was closer to Pepsi. They changed the formula and they called it New Coke, and a lot of people did not like it. But the takeaway from this is that when they brought back Coca-Cola Classic, the sales of it skyrocketed to way higher than it was before. And people think that was all a extremely elaborate marketing conspiracy to raise the value and raise the awareness of Coke.
So here's the thing. It very clearly was not, especially since the guy who came up with the New Coke idea in the first place actually continued to make and drink New Coke for himself for the rest of his life. I'm not even making that up. He personally really liked New Coke. And in fact, blind taste tests during the creation of the formula found that most participants, when they didn't know what was what, they preferred New Coke to both the original formula and to Pepsi.
Right.
However, they really should have seen that failure coming, because a significant portion of those respondents also said the change would take getting used to. But amusingly, it was actually suggested during this development, we should just make this a separate product and sell both at once. But management rejected the idea.
I believe they ended up doing that. They could get, in many districts, you could get Coke 2, which is basically New Coke as just a completely separate product. And interestingly enough, you can, I don't know if this is true, but I don't know if this is still true, but regular Coke is based on the original formula, but Diet Coke, they found out that the artificial sweetener works better with the New Coke formula than with the original. So Diet Coke is based on New Coke, but regular Coke is based on the original formula.
Huh, that I didn't know. But ultimately, New Coke, in its original form, was only on the market for less than 3 months. And it's funny how you talked about, the South earlier and how they really love Coca-Cola. When New Coke was first pushed out in test markets like New York, it was incredibly successful. People only started, the backlash only started when it started rolling out in the South, which, ties into what you mentioned earlier. But ultimately, New Coke is one of the most infamous marketing failures in history.
Which, arguably, it wasn't even a marketing failure, because it way increased the sales of original Coke once it did come back.
Yeah.
Yeah, but, it's not what they intended.
It may not have been what they intended, but it's what ended up happening, which, again, leads back to comedy.
Although an interesting side note to that whole story, it is actually theorized by some people that the backlash is just a vocal minority.
Right, yeah.
That, made people, that poisoned the well. Because even during, a lot of the market research, there were a lot of groups where you would have like one or two people responding extremely negatively, and from that exposure, everyone else in the group had slightly more lukewarm reception than the very positive reception from the people who, in groups that had no one outright disliking the new formula. So even on a national scale, it's very possible that, this vocal minority backlash, vehemently hating New Coke, poisoned the well and turned it into a joke, so that people were basically primed to hate it even before they tried it.
Yeah, which, again, if you're into marketing or if you're into market research, if you're doing any sort of that as a student or you're trying to get into this field, this is absolutely a case study to look into. And because I've run into that problem before, too, like the way that I ran my YouTube channel, I would encounter some extremely vocal negative responses when all the positive responses, and it makes you forget all the positive responses no matter how many you have. There's something just innate about negative responses get attention.
I'm not saying that it made the marketers forget the positive responses. I'm saying that even the positive responses became less positive in these test groups after someone gave a very negative one.
Yeah, that too, of course.
So it was definitely like people trying to fit in with the group, which is a very known factor in like test groups and, these marketing research things.
Yeah, absolutely. When you're running test groups like this, you really do want to get their individual response in addition to their response as a group, so you can sort of see just how people feel about these things.
Yeah, hell, with the backlash with New Coke, apparently, from what I have heard, it was actually a common joke for people to say while New Coke was on the market, I like New Coke, but don't let anyone find out. Because public perception.
We've gone way out.
Yeah, we are way past where we started, but that's
to be fair, it's a topic worth talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really interesting part that was I'm the oldest one here. I still barely remember the New Coke discourse, the whole New Coke discourse.
Well, I was just really curious, so I ended up doing a bit of research into the topic at one point, so I'm familiar with all of these details. But it is fascinating just how that happened. You had this product that went over really well in testing, and in blind circumstances, everyone loved it. And then when it actually went on the market and people knew what it was and it was replacing this familiar thing, people just didn't like change, even if it was change for the better. And you see the same thing everywhere. Anyway, back on topic.
Yeah, we're almost at an hour.
Yeah, we're almost at an hour. I'm sure part of it will be edited down by the end. But yeah, I think that'll kind of do it for this episode, won't it? We're pretty much... I've finished all my talking points.
Well, I've got a couple other jokes I want to point out,
Oh yeah, there's another thing I wanted to bring up. Right at the very beginning, when Fry's looking into the can and it says, "You are a loser," I'm just thinking about the fact that I remember this stand-up comedian saying this joke that he opened up a yogurt can and it said, "Not a winner." And I didn't realize they were having a contest. I thought it was commenting on me as a person.
Ha. Do you know what comedian that was off the top of your head?
I don't remember, no.
That's unfortunate.
I thought maybe I should try opening it again. Maybe I opened it wrong. And I think it might have been like Mitch Hedberg's. I opened it. It said try again. I didn't realize they were having a contest at the time. I thought maybe I opened the can of soda wrong.
Yeah, that does sound like something Mitch Hedberg would say. I also really like the background gag at the end of the Bureau of Soft Drinks, Tobacco, and Firearms.
Yeah, well, I guess because soft drinks have such alcohol has always been very addictive, so if soft drinks have that same sort of addictive quality, then yeah, you kind of need to add them to the mix.
And also the professor just saying, "I'm not your grandpa, you're my uncle from the year 2000. But when you put it like that, it sounds ridiculous.
I really like this episode. This is probably going to be in my top 5 when we do the countdown next time, I suppose.
Yeah, the episodes, for me, it's really dragged down by that one scene, but it's especially frustrating because everything else in this episode is really funny. It's just that one bit.
And interestingly enough, you probably could edit out that scene entirely because it really does not accomplish anything. You have all the other jokes of them going around using the F-ray on things, so you probably could make a very clean edit of just taking that scene out entirely.
Yeah, you might even be able to make it nearly seamless, and like I don't think anyone would even notice. It's which makes it especially frustrating. Like, just it's there, and I can't ignore it. But everything else in this episode is just so good. It really drags it down and makes it so hard to like. But yeah, what you said, TZ. This is the end of Futurama's season, but not the end of ours, because next week we are going to be doing a sort of an overview of what we thought of the season as a whole, as well as counting down our top 5 best and worst episodes of the season. So look forward to that.
Yeah, and take care, everybody.
Bye. Thank you for listening to Space Podcast 3000. Your 3 voices of the future are Nova Altman, Doug Hancock, and Eden Valerie. The theme music is Voxel Revolution by Kevin MacLeod, licensed from filmmusic.io. Find it and hundreds of other free songs at incompetech.filmmusic.io. You can hear more episodes of Space Podcast 3000 on YouTube or at soundcloud.com/SpacePod3K. Follow us on Twitter at SpacePod3K. Be sure to join us next time as we count down the best and worst episodes of Season 1.